We've done a lot of programs about recreational marijuana and CBDs in the past, and it's always a good time to get a refresher, a good update, and especially when we have an opportunity to highlight a local company that is putting a product out there, a product that I would say is a little more palatable to the human tongue than some of the other ways that people are administering CBDs and recreational marijuana. And yeah, there is a difference, and we're going to learn what that difference is. We have Susan Scherer on the line with us this morning. She owns and runs Heavenly Hash Company over in Pinellas Park, and it's a high-protein CBD product. And Susan really, I think, came to develop this product because she worked as a nurse, oncology nurse at the Moffitt Cancer Center for most of her career. She's seen the ravages of cancer just like I have, you have, most of our friends and family can all name at least 5 people who have been affected by that horrible disease, cancer, and we know what the treatment and recovery is like for those patients. So that, what I think, has guided Susan down this path. I don't know. Let's hear from her and see if that's the case. Susan Scherer, good to hear from you this morning from Heavenly Hash, checking in from Pinellas Park. Oncology nurse over at Moffitt Center. That was probably one of the most rewarding but hardest jobs you've ever had in your life.
It was, and it gave me a lot of insight into patients and their needs. And when I left Moffitt Cancer Center, I actually started another company that navigated cancer patients and their families through all the aspects of their care. So I had a 360 view of what they were going through. And nutrition was a huge component. Healing was an issue. 1 out of 4 stage 4 cancer patients will pass away from something called cachexia syndrome, which is muscle wasting, instead of their cancer. And so really being able to have a product that would actually add, fat and also add protein into their diet and then be palatable, that's what made me create Heavenly Hash Creamery, was to use ice cream as a delivery system for patients.
Now, see, the difference, I think, between Heavenly Hash ice cream and some of the other products that I've seen on the market is you really plug the word protein. I think that comes in the ingredients list before even CBDs, and I think that's a big difference, and that's important to somebody who's in recovery from any disease, especially cancer treatment. Protein, very important to the human body when it comes to healing.
Exactly. And, it was important to have a product that tasted good without the aftertaste. There's so many products out there that don't. And so, I always remembered working with patients, ice cream was always palatable. We use flavors to stimulate salivary glands like lemon blueberry, because lemon used to make people salivate. We used lemon sticks when I worked in the ICU as well. My background is also critical care. And so that gave me the idea to have this product and then make it soy-free, kosher, low lactose, gluten-free, all those things that were really important to the patient. And then deciding, let's try putting cannabis into this product. So let's make it with and without for patients.
And whenever we have a friend or a loved one, family member that has been diagnosed with cancer, they're going through the treatment, no matter what kind of diagnosis it is, we just know it's cancer. Whenever you ask somebody, how's Bob doing? What do they always say? The same thing. Oh, he's wasting away. I saw him yesterday and he's wasting away. You wouldn't recognize him. He's lost so much weight. And that's true, because these people that are suffering from cancer, the treatment themselves make him waste away. And that's one thing that we're trying to combat here with a product like Heavenly Hash, is trying to get a little weight gain, because a lot of times they're not able to gain weight because they can't keep it down because of nausea. And a lot of times, as you know, as an oncology nurse, they got no appetite.
Right. And this may be, the only thing that they eat. So it's really important. And to give them something that's cold and soothing and, like I said, that tastes good is so important. But to have that protein on board to actually heal, too, to get ready for your next round if need be. And a lot of times treatments have to get cut because they're not receiving that nutrition.
A lot of the patients that are currently having treatment for some kind of cancer, and they've had friends and family say, why don't you look into CBDs? And they reply, I'm not touching that. That's marijuana. That's going to get me high, and I don't want to get high. It's always a good time to re-educate the public the difference between recreational, medical, and CBDs when it comes to marijuana. We all have the marijuana card now. If you deserve it and need it here in the state of Florida, that is available to you through your doctor, or you can find a doctor who can get you that card. I don't need it. I don't have one. Don't take it. But if I'm one of these people that say, I don't want to get high, but I do want to see if this can help improve my appetite if I'm under treatment for cancer, what's the difference between the recreational marijuana that we see at the dispensaries and the CBDs?
So it's important to know that Cannabis, which is basically the family name, right, has two kids. One is marijuana, one is hemp. Marijuana contains a high amount of THC, which is the psychoactive, which gets you high. There are cannabinoids in there, but it's mostly the THC in the plant. The hemp plant is mostly a cannabinoid plant. So CBD is just an acronym for cannabidiol, but there are over 120 different cannabinoids within that plant. There's CBN, there's CBG. And what we've come to realize is that, it was discovered about maybe around 50, 20 years ago that we actually have the endocannabinoid system in our body. Without it, we wouldn't even be here. And so knowing that the system is responsible for regulating your hormones, for inflammation, for reducing pain, for rebuilding the mitochondria and cells, it's very, very important that some of the cannabinoids that we would normally get from food, like mangoes and chocolates, things have been so GMO'd that we don't get them. And so, of course, it's how everybody feels on it is anecdotal, and it's to them. Some people feel less anxious. Some people have less inflammation. Some people experience less pain, less anxiety. And so, when we talk about CBD, I think the most important thing that consumers need to know is no, that will not get you high. No one has ever overdosed from cannabis. It's impossible because those endocannabinoid system is not connected to the central nervous system. And in your brain, you have what's called, cannabinoid receptor 1, and throughout your body, cannabinoid receptor 2. And so it's a very interesting, complex system that it's amazing we were never taught. I was never taught it in medical school. The fact that it's come to light so later in life for most of us, it's a learning curve. But I think what people need to be concerned about when they are looking at CBD products is right now the state is really on top of regulating these products. They need to have testing behind them. If your product doesn't have a QR code that goes back to the testing that you can see, that's an issue. Those products hopefully will be pulled from the shelf because it's all about protecting the consumer. And I know in our case, when it came to putting it in ice cream, our product gets tested for pesticides and metals and all these other things because these are immunocompromised patients. And so that is the big difference between the two products.
And I'm glad to hear, and I'm going to interrupt you there because that was one of my questions about you can't drive by a gas station or a convenience store or sometimes even a fruit stand, and I see a sign out front that says CBD oil available here. And I know the state of Florida is working and cracking down at that. I've talked to other people in your industry who are totally saying, yeah, get these guys, these charlatans, they're selling snake oil to people,
right.
And they're basically just, and I hate to say it, but they're frauds. They're ripping them off. We're talking about a difference between a product that can actually help you through your sickness and your recovery, and we can talk about buying a product real cheap at a walk-in store where basically, anybody can buy it and basically it's going to do nothing for you. There is a big difference what you're seeing with your company like Heavenly Hash and then what you're seeing in other stores.
Absolutely. And, for instance, Florida, we have our hemp regulations. There's 47 states that have hemp regulations. Florida went the extra step to actually include dairy regulations because of products like ours. So Florida is really front and center in actually putting cannabinoids within a dairy product, first and foremost than anywhere else in the United States. and they have been so supportive of what we're doing. But it's really important. We want regulation in place. We want patients to be protected and consumers to be protected. But if somebody is saying, "Hey, I make this in my kitchen," or buy it at a gas station, like I said, without that testing, you shouldn't be touching it. Don't touch it.
Absolutely, and know what to look for on that label, like you mentioned earlier. As you well know, Susan, setting up your business and leaving oncology nursing to go into the Heavenly Hash business to make protein, high protein, by the way, and CBD ice cream and various flavors available for people that are fighting cancer or any other malady. Susan is a healthcare provider, so she could probably guide you to exactly what you need when you go to her website, heavenlyhash.com, or you go ahead and stop by and see her over there in Pinellas Park. You're used to dealing with the state of Florida because you were behind the rights and responsibility of patients bill, and that was something that you put a lot of your heart and soul into. So you're used to dealing with Tallahassee. How hard is it to get a business like yours up and running? What kind of licensing, inspections, and stuff like that takes place?
Oh, well, there's a lot of barriers in the cannabis industry to begin with. We can't market like normal companies. We can't use banking like normal companies. There's a lot of restrictions. We can't get small business loans like normal companies. People are leery about working with you because of the stigma of what cannabis is, which is sad. And, it takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, it does. It does take a lot of guts.
Not for the lighthearted. Every day is an adventure. Working with Tallahassee because they're wanting to do the right things. And yes, I was fortunate enough to, write a bill that protects patients in the state of Florida to upgrade the patient bill of rights. So I had some familiarity with Tallahassee and how it worked. Plus, I've done a lot of stuff in Washington, D.C. on behalf of cancer patients. And so you just have to be persistent. You have to be bold. You have to know the right people. I think the biggest thing of all, and I've had people say this to us, is, you're so transparent in the integrity of your company. And everything I've ever done has been to protect patients and to improve the quality of life in others. And so this is just another way to do it, whether it's cancer patients, whether it's anyone, cystic fibrosis patients, whoever is dealing with these issues. And so that being said, we have been very transparent and worked very, very hard to have a high standard. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of heart.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of patience whenever you're dealing with Tallahassee. And Susan, I have to ask you, because you are a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, how do you feel about the federal government right now when it comes to medical marijuana and CBDs? Keeping a hands-off approach. Right now, they're not doing a decriminalization on a federal level, which basically ties the hands of the VA. You and I both know horror stories of our veterans that would benefit from a product like yours, but they're afraid to try it or even ask about it. They're afraid they're going to get their VA card yanked. They're not going to get their VA benefits. I've actually talked to the VA, their research department. They said, we can't do anything until the feds do something. Our hands are tied at the VA. What kind of difficulty do you see there for our veterans that are coming back right now from Iraq and Afghanistan and other areas around the globe that may be suffering from something that a CBD product would help?
This is something that is very dear to me because of my affiliation with the military. And I think it's something that I know lawmakers have been working on. Gus Bilirakis, I know, is very much for veterans and really, and also for cancer patients. He's a huge advocate. And I remember right before Bill Nelson left office, he also introduced a bill for the VA to be able to access medical marijuana and cannabis. And there is a push, and I think that anything's possible. If I can write a bill, I think anybody can get a hold of their legislator to tell them how important it is and what they need, because it isn't right to put veterans on 11 different medications with all these different side effects. Putting them on narcotics, which we don't know where they're made, what they're made of, that seems to be okay for some reason. but putting them on a plant isn't. And I think that at some point, members need to, take it into their own hands and say, listen, this is something that I need. And, veterans are doing that. There are veterans groups that are very pro-cannabis that are out there. I've seen them. I've met with them. And I think we just have to support what they're doing and support a person's choice to be able to take a medication or a plant that they feel that will help them so that they don't have to take these other medications that can also cause suicidal ideation. I mean, that's a huge issue with our veterans coming back.
Right, and as a former nurse, an RN, an oncology nurse, a lot of these medications that they're giving them, 12 different pills a day, can also damage the internal organs, and that's not helping anybody, especially if you're fighting something like cancer, something that can attack the kidneys, the livers, or other vital organs that we need.
Exactly. I mean, you talk about pain medication that's very constipating for patients, and then they're coming in, with blockages in their intestines, or, there's so many side effects to these drugs. And, especially the psychoactive drugs for for anxiety and those type of things. If there's something else there that can help them, that's natural and doesn't get them high, that's what they need to have access to. And I think we just need to fight for that. And I think we need to be vocal, and people need to write their legislators, body and tell them.
And we only have a couple minutes left with you, Susan, and we need to talk about your product and, of course, your website. I had it wrong earlier. I want to make sure I'd get a correction here. I wish you had jumped in and said, you have it wrong, you idiot.
You were on a roll.
It's heavenlyhashcreamery.com, heavenlyhashcreamery.com. Do I need a medical marijuana card to come see you?
No, you don't. Mm-mm.
So that's question number one out of the way. Now, question number two. Tell us about your product. Is it ice cream only?
It is ice cream only. Like I said, it's a 4-ounce food service cup. We decided with and without the CBD that we wanted, with the CBD, to dose it in a particular cup. We wanted people to be able to say, okay, this is what this dose is, instead of having to try to figure it out. And so that was very important. So it comes in 50 milligrams in one cup. Like I said, it comes with and without. We have it in salted caramel, French vanilla, creamy cocoa, and lemon blueberry, which is a very interesting combination, but it's great for patients that can't taste.
And if anybody has questions about, is it gluten-free? Does it contain soy? I'm lactose intolerant. All those questions are easily answered right on your website. You've got an awesome facts page there. And again, heavenlyhashcreamery.com is where you go to learn more. And go by see Susan over in Pinellas Park. Where are you actually located, physical address in Pinellas Park?
It's actually our warehouse because we wholesale it out. So we are in, it's 6511 43rd Street in Pinellas Park.
Do you ever see a day, Susan, where you'll see your product in a grocery store?
Yes, I do. It's pretty exciting. When we were making the product just the other day, it was, the state was there. Everybody was there watching it come off the line since the hemp rules had gone into effect. And we were making history, for the first time. An ice cream company on such a large scale was able to produce, with the support of regulation, cannabis and ice cream. And that's been done before Ben & Jerry's, who Unilever owns them, and before anybody else does it. And so it's a really exciting time.
And I think one thing we really want to point to is people that are lactose intolerant, because if you've ever seen a family member or you've got a friend that says, I can't eat cheese, you can have a little bit, and then they eat a little bit and it really messes up their system. If they have a lactose issue, are they still able to have your product, or do you offer a lactose-free product?
So our lactose levels, when we measured them in our ice cream, are 0.84 grams to 2.5 grams. And what that means is, if you were to compare that to a cup of skim milk, a cup of skim milk is 13 grams. So it's extremely low, and it's low because we have very low caseins. When you have a high fat content, your caseins are low in your product, and so it's very tolerable for people. We use all natural ingredients. I stayed with cane sugar from the Everglades in Florida. The reason we did that, we didn't want sugar alcohols. There are some ice creams that are out there that try to be sugar-free, but they use sugar alcohols, and that actually upsets the GI tract and can be very disturbing. And so we made sure that was not included in our product.
Well, I do consider CBD products and recreational marijuana to be a drug, not a drug like you think, like a pill, but it is a drug, but it's a plant form drug. And, a habit forming, people have to worry about that. CBD oils, your CBD ice cream like you have, that's a non-habit forming thing, right?
Correct. And the jury's out even with cannabis being habit forming, where you can actually stop taking cannabis, and it's not like your body goes through some type of withdrawal. In fact, they've actually shown with cannabis that because of those neurons within the brain, that with those receptors that I was telling you about, that actually there's a reconnection when you're coming off of the harder drugs like heroin and some of those other drugs, that actually helps with the transition and rebuilds those connections, and also helps with not wanting that craving. CBD, you will not feel any different. It is not habit forming. You don't feel any different than if you were to take an aspirin. Obviously, some people will say they feel a little more relaxed. That's really up to the individual. We don't make any medical claims whatsoever. It's really up to the individual what they're going to feel.
Since we're talking about a food item here, because you do sell the ice cream product only over there at Heavenly Hash Creamery, we always wonder about a shelf life with a product. I mean, even some pills have a shelf life. We're told that by our doctor when he writes the prescription. After this date, don't take these. They're not going to do you any good anymore. They lose their potency. And when you're making a food product, you're also looking at putting in some kind of preservative so it has a better shelf life. And you as a nurse know that some preservatives are not good for people fighting cancer. So the shelf life of a product like yours, is it something we got to go home and eat right away before it goes bad? Or because it's in the freezer, it's going to stay a while?
It's in the freezer. It'll stay a while.
Easy answer to that question.
But I'm going to tell you, you're going to like it so much it won't last very long in your house.
And of course, everybody nowadays is really concerned about the environment, and rightfully so. We thrive on the environment here in Florida with our beautiful waterways and our great estuaries, and we're always concerned about the environment. So I got to ask you, is your product environmentally friendly? I'll put you on the hot seat.
It is, actually. Sustainability was a huge consideration in what we were producing. So our product it's recyclable on the top, the aluminum on the top. It's also it's not made out of plastic, so the paper is recyclable. The packaging that we overnight it in, we actually don't use styrofoam. We use a foam that's made out of cornstarch. And so you're able to melt it as soon as you go home, and you can recycle the box. And so it was definitely important to limit our environmental footprint, to make sure that if we are a company of quality of life, so why would we do anything to harm the environment? So that is a huge consideration in what we do.
Susan, I got to ask you, because you perked my interest when you said we ship it overnight. Are you allowed only to sell in the state of Florida, or could you sell nationwide? Because you're on the World Wide Web, heavenlyhashcreamery.com. If somebody, let's say, because we have streaming audience right now, somebody in Kentucky or Indiana or all the way over on the West Coast is listening to us, and they say, we don't have that in my area. I'd sure like to try it. Are you allowed by the government to ship across state lines?
It really depends on the hemp program that they have in place. Of course, the FDA has a position that, CBD should not be in food. And that is a position that they're taking currently until everything gets figured out. But due to the Farm Bill states that states have a right to regulate what goes on in their state. And like I said, there's 47 hemp programs out there. There's a handful that actually allow CBD, because they consider cannabidiol with a less than 0.3% THC in the product to be considered hemp. And so if that meets those requirements, then we are able to ship to that location. But that you have to be in a state that allows it.
Susan, we're just about at the end of the clock here, and I've got to ask you, is there anything in our conversation when it comes to treatment for our cancer patients? Let's say if we're a family member right now and we are with and live with and are caretakers for a loved one or a spouse or a child, and it's so hard to see children. It's hard to see anybody fight cancer, but a child, that's just like a knife to my gut when I hear about a poor kid that's been diagnosed with cancer. They're the caregiver right now. What's the most important message you can give them as a former oncology nurse with Moffitt, now running your own business, trying to alleviate people's pain, give them appetites, helping them fight the nausea by using CBDs in your ice cream? What's the healing message you have for them?
I think the biggest thing that I've seen families measure is they're able to look at their loved one and say, are they eating, or are they not eating? It seems to be we associate everything with food. If they're eating, then it means they must be doing better. And it is something that you have control of, because you can go to the store, you can purchase, unlike medications. You can't just go to a pharmacy and pick up a medication for your loved one. And it's hard to watch them go through what they go through. So nutrition is a huge aspect. And I think that, with patients and with families, every journey is different, and, every need is different, and you want to do what you can for that loved one, and you really have to take it at their pace and find out what they want out of their quality of life, and regardless of the outcome. And, our way of bringing this little bit of happiness and a little bit of quality of life is our way of doing it. And I would just say, as a family member, listen, be supportive, meet them where they're at. That's what I would say.
And I've got to ask you, because you've come from this medical community, right here in the Tampa Bay area, many of the doctors, and I see more and more doctors. I hear from more and more medical professionals that are now leaning towards CBDs and recreational. Heck, my own doctor was against it before we even voted for it. And now he's one of the most, he's actually taken his own time to do his own investigative work and goes, I've seen the reports. I've seen this work, and I've totally done a turnaround on this. If somebody is coming to you and they're buying the Heavenly Hash product, or they're going anywhere for any CBD product, and hopefully they're buying from you or somebody reputable, and they're actually getting a product that's going to benefit them, is it something they should go ahead and let their oncologist know? Because sometimes we, the general layman, the public, we don't like going behind our doctor's back, because if they find out that I'm doing something they told me not to do, or they didn't know I was doing, they're going to quit treating me, or I'm going to get less treatment, which is not true. But is it something that we need to discuss with our oncologist, that I've heard about Heavenly Hash and I'd like to give it a try to see if maybe I can keep food down?
Absolutely. I think you need to discuss anything that you're taking, whether it's Heavenly Hash Creamery, or whether you're taking, you're eating blueberries. And the reason I say that is, if you are a patient that's going through radiation, for example, and, someone's telling you, oh, you really need all these antioxidants and you need to build up your system. Well, the last thing you want to have is antioxidants while you're getting radiation. You're buying those radicals so that you can kill your cancer. So, I think it's very important that you always have that dialogue with your physician. And one of the things that we did when I had my company navigating patients, and the reason I wrote the Patient Bill of Rights, this section, was it allowed patients to feel comfortable enough to have a person of their choosing go to an inpatient or outpatient healthcare setting and while they're having a consultation with their doctor, without feeling like you're going to be removed. So I think it's very important for patients to have a dialogue with their physician, because the physician is working for them. You are paying somebody to work for you. A lot of times people think that they don't want to offend their doctor. Well, first off, a doctor can't tell you, that's it, I'm not treating you anymore. It's against the law. They'd have 30 days to make you transition. But, patients just need to be a little more assertive and take a little more control of their care and feel comfortable doing it, or having someone speak up for them on their behalf and not worry about, being thrown out of a hospital or an appointment. That doesn't happen anymore in the state of Florida.
Thank God.
Thanks to House Bill 1253. So, I think it's very, very important that patients and families and caregivers take control of their care in all aspects of it, but include your doctor and the nurses because you're a team. And, there are some medications, for example, there are some chemotherapies that you can be on that you can't have anything cold. So that's a conversation you do need to have with your physician.
HeavenlyHashCreamery.com is your website. Susan Scherer, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning.
Thank you.